the best possible situation here. Everybody is with us. Michelle, I don't see you, but I know your little tile is on my. Hello to you.
It is. I'm here. I'm just finishing my lunch and nobody wants to see me eat. So
That's all right. I've done it myself. Brenda, welcome. Hello, Commissioner Wheeler. Good to see you. Sherry. Mayor Grandy, glad to have you joining us by phone. And our wonderful attorney, Ms. Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. All right. So just welcome to everyone. We should get started by reminding everyone that there's still an executive order, although I hear we're on the last days of this executive order, that allows us to meet by Zoom. But we do need to establish that the meeting is important enough that it can be held electronically. So if I could have someone make a motion to that effect, that would be helpful.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'll second.
Who was that, Susan?
Yep, that was me. Sorry, I looked down.
Okay. And we can just do we're supposed to do roll call, aren't we, on this, Allison? Okay, we'll do a roll call. I have been doing minutes for these meetings, so I don't mind to continue to do that, and I'll just take the roll call. Susan?
Here.
Well, this is yes or no.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, electronic meeting. Kathy?
Here.
Yes, meaning yes on the electronic, yeah. Sherry?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Great. It's a busy time. We have, all of us had, I'm sure, a busy morning. And so let's just start the meeting with a moment of silence that gives everyone an opportunity to set an intention for our short time together today, and think a bit about how we can make this time really effective for our county and all of the citizens that rely on our work. Thank you. We have 3 items on our agenda today, and I'm really excited to hear Susan's updates and input on all of them. The 3 items are a proposed, the first item is our internal emails that have been going out. Susan has done 2 of these now. We had 1 at the last meeting, and now we've seen 2 mayoral email updates. The second topic is our social media policy, and the third topic is updates on improvements to the county website. And those are really the 3 main items that this advisory board has prioritized in terms of what feels like it would be helpful for communication in the county. Let's go ahead and get started with the first one. Susan, do you have any updates on the process and how it's going in terms of the emails, composing them, sending them, feedback, anything you've heard, concerns?
As far as sending the emails, you know, we're kind of struggling a little bit on doing 2 emails a month. We may need to scale that back, just depending on what you all are exactly looking to get out of that emails. If there's something different you would like to see from an internal standpoint.
And just having the time to compose them, or not enough news?
Not enough news. I mean, we're pretty open with our information here in the courthouse on this side as well as the other side of the street between each other. So sometimes it's, you know, already gone out before we would do an email.
And Susan, what's the process by which you gather the information for that newsletter?
So far with the 2 times we've done this, I've worked with the mayor And then we've checked around with the other elected officials to see if there's anything else going on in their specific areas.
Great.
As you remember, the first one was regarding reopening the courthouse to the public, and then this last one kind of updated on where we were with budget and the assessor's office.
Yeah, it had some helpful updates, including like Kristen Minnick stepping aside, just some good bits of information in there. Can we get some input from folks? What did you think about the emails? We've had two. Think about the process. Any input, helpful comments for Susan or feedback?
Who is that being distributed to?
Michelle distributed it to all employees, and then I turn around and send it to the commissioners.
I think maybe it should go to the elected officials and department heads and let them disseminate that out to their employees. The last one that indicated the 2% cost of living, or the 2% raise, caused a little confusion amongst several departments. So I wonder if going forward, that should maybe go to the department head and the official and let them disseminate it to their employees, maybe post it or share it. I didn't think about it being an issue when Susan forwarded it to me and asked me to forward it to all employees, but it somewhat did become a little issue.
So just the first one we sent out, we did just to send it to department heads so that they and electeds, and then the second one we sent to everyone.
Right.
I don't know that, I'm a little concerned though that the cure there for that one particular problem may thwart what we're really trying to do. You know, if we have department heads who don't end up disseminating it, or who selectively disseminate the information from it, then we may not get the information that we want to get out to the employees out there. I just wonder, I understand that problem, but I just wonder if there's not some things we can put in place to review the information going out before it goes out, rather than just saying we're going to, because I don't, you know, the solution to that, if a department head got it, would have been to not send it out, or to pick and choose what went out. And in some ways, there's an issue I think that's going to have to be dealt with about the budget still, but perhaps, at least it's been raised by one commissioner. But you know, from the budget committee standpoint, I think that information was accurate, that amount of money was being provided to the department heads. And I for one think that that's something the commission would want the employees to know.
And it did state that it was the proposed increase. It didn't say that this is what you're getting. It was the proposed increase as of now.
Right.
If anybody that's on is on that's not muted could mute, that would be great. Just we have a little bit of interference. It might be coming from you, Mayor Grandy.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Mayor. You let me know if you need to be unmuted, though. Okay, he's muted now.
This is a real kind of a conundrum for us, trying to decide which pathway to go forward. And I don't have a really strong response. I see Jim's point. I feel like folks need information and should get information, and not at the discretion of department heads. But I also really heard Michelle loud and clear last week as well, when she spoke about all the email people get and trying to, curate that a little bit so people pay attention to emails when they get them. And yeah, so I don't know. Brenda, do you have any thoughts on that, since you have a department that you manage, or Kathy?
I personally, Jody, I'm fine with it, but I also don't have 240 employees like the sheriff's department. and I have no idea what their intentions are. Mine's across the board, but I do know that they did an awful lot of work on salary adjustments for the jail, and they've really worked hard with the mayor, county commission, whomever, to bring their pay up. I don't know all the specifics, it's not my department, but I know that when an email went out, I think they were pretty concerned, and I don't know if they had intentions of giving 2%. I don't know. I think that was the concern of it going out to all employees versus department heads. Of course, I mean, it is public record. People know that the 2%'s there. They can take it up with their department head. But, I mean, mine's across the board like it was last year, so.
What action does this board want to take on this issue? We've done it each way. We've done it through department heads, and we've done it straight through to all of the employees. I'm kind of with Jim a little bit 60-40 on this one. I'd assume the purpose of these communications is greater transparency, a little bit more knowledge from all of our constituents and especially our employees on what's going on in the county. That's the whole purpose of the communications work. To me, that makes sense to send it out to everybody. We could just do that for another month or so and then revisit and see if we're continuing to create, more problems than it's worth, or kind of reevaluate.
The good thing about the way we've done it so far, I will say, is it's kind of like doing A/B testing, which is, when you're trying to gauge engagement on things. So we sent it out the first time to all the department heads and elected officials and got decent response back from them. And then the second time we sent it out to everyone, and obviously they read it because people called to inquire. So I think both ways are working. The mayor is planning on doing a meeting with all the elected officials and department heads in July. So that'll be coming up next. Maybe we want to tailor some of the information that goes out after that just to employees. It's kind of an update on what we've discussed in case it's not filtering back down. But I think most of our department heads and elected officials are good at informing their departments.
Well, and Susan, whatever comes up in that department head meeting with the mayor in July is exactly the kind of thing the county commission would be interested in hearing about. So, distilling that down, adding in information for employees.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's try that. I'll take your advice on this one, and it sounds like you've really thought about the two ways and kind of listened to the feedback, and let's go forward with it, and we'll just continue to evaluate it and monitor it.
So we'll do the in-person meeting with the department heads and electeds in July and follow up with an email to all employees and the commission after that meeting. Sound good?
I like it.
Okay, good.
Are you still going to try to do 2 memos in the month of July?
No, I think we would just do 1. Don't you, Sherry? I think if we tried to do 2, we'd hurt ourselves a little bit.
I just don't know there's enough information.
Yeah. That's one thing.
Is there anything in particular you're looking for, Jody, on these memos that we could pull in?
I really like incorporating reports from departments. I feel like that's where the county commission gets the least input. We just don't have a way of visiting with those folks and really hearing what's going on with them. And then, if the mayor does something really interesting, like meets with the city, or for example, I just found out this morning from Dr. Kershke that he's holding a regular update for all local officials and others. If he's getting updates and wants to report to us on those things, anything that just is going on that's kind of interesting and may relate to just us staying current with what's going on in the county.
I know at one time we had talked about, and this has been last year, a news digest where, pulling links to the clips for the week that have popped up about the county in the paper. Would you be interested in seeing things like that? Hey, Jim, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
There you go.
I think that might be more something that we put in a communication to the commission. And I think that's something that would be, that I wanted to talk about a little bit today there's a lot of things that would be of interest to the commission that come to you all that we don't get. Information about things going on in the community, regionalism, get-togethers, or information about what's going on with regionalism. And I think we're headed toward some of the commission feeling like some things have moved forward that we have not had hardly any information on at all, that we're going to hit some resistance on. And I think it's a good opportunity to head that off, or at least we'll probably head that off by sharing some of that information. There are all kinds of events that we get kind of at the after it's too late to get them on our calendars and things like that, that I think that I would suggest the communications role would be a good place to cover that, to get that information out so we can get things on our calendar and know what's going on.
Mhm.
I did ask Barbara Mittingen from the Chamber of Commerce to add all of the commissioners to her distribution list. Have either of you been receiving emails from the chamber?
No.
Okay, I'm going to follow back around with her because there are a couple of things coming up that they're still doing virtually. One of them I thought Jody might be interested in. It was a public health thing that they're doing with the Kingsport Chamber. So I'm going to make sure you all are getting those, because she did promise she would add you.
That'd be great. But I will say, I do get emails from an awful lot of different distribution lists.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to weed through them all, and to have our county kind of directing me
Okay.
would be fantastic.
So maybe I can just go through those for you, when she sends them to me, and send out reminders that things are coming up.
Yep, and maybe it's just at the bottom of this mayoral update where you tell us what happened with the department meeting, give us other updates, and then at the bottom there's a little section, upcoming dates for county commission to consider or something, and there's a short list of August, September, kind of looking out so we can get our schedules
right
up. If you run across those things, you just keep them in a little pile and then stick them in there at the.
Which kind of brings me around to something I thought about this morning. We're going to do a popular annual financial report, a PAFR. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, where we will condense down the CAFR into a one sheet that you can use when you're talking to constituents, that would say what money we operate off of on one side, and on the flip side it would kind of say where that money comes from. So one side is, where does it come from, where does it go? And then there would be an expanded one on our website that would be more in line with what some other counties and municipalities do, to expand out, but in plain language, what is in their CAFR every year. And it's called a PAFR.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so I'll be working on that in the next couple of weeks to get that for the commission to have, and then we'll house it on our website. So that way you've got a couple of spots you can give some folks some info. Tying that back into when we have our committee meetings, would it be helpful to the commissioners to get kind of a rundown as to what has happened in those meetings sent to them after committee day, since everyone can't attend every meeting?
It's a really great question. And I have had some conversations with Ms. Wilkinson about how this committee fits in with other committees in our regular standing committee makeup, and how we can build our work in so it's available to the full commission. Allison, do you want to weigh in on that at all, or?
We do get their minutes. I'd point that out.
Mm-hmm.
that would be actually my first thought, is that all of the minutes are distributed in draft form in the packet. Now, obviously, that is a week later. It's not the day of. So that would be my first thought. And that's consistent with my general view of, who is messaging, right? What is it we're messaging, and that it should be the. Sorry, my battery may be running low there. I beg your pardon if it clipped on you. When I say who is messaging, what I meant was the action being taken and that sort of thing. And that's what we have in the meetings. It reflects the action that's being taken. And so more about that later with the social media policy, but just so that Susan has the best opportunity to, have a straight line of what she's communicating, by whom, to whom, and that sort of thing. I think the minutes are the best source of information for those committees.
Can we also have the other benefits that the other committees have are things like a preserved committed time in county commission meetings, or some things like that. I mean, the ability to move resolutions to the full commission? I don't know. Are those things I bring up with the chair, or?
If that question was for me, Commissioner, would you mind repeating it?
Just, it sounds like our minutes can go in the packet, but we also have an opportunity to report out during meetings like other committees do. Seems like committees are built into it in a more structured way.
Specific to this task force is your question, not all committees generally. I think that this is a task force of the commission created through the board of commissioners, and I would imagine that you do have a place on the commission agenda to share the information, how you're moving forward, what you plan to do. I do think there's a place for that the chairman would not have as a standing committee, because it's not a standing committee, but I'm sure he would. I presume that he would, since it is created out of the commission board rules.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I mean, I think that's an action for me, just to take that up with Commissioner Matherly or Chairman, so that we have a chance to report in. Now, July is the meeting when we always report in on our quarterly objectives, and communications is one of our quarterly objectives. So we would be reporting in July anyway, but we need a routine way to fill folks in. And I think the minutes are a great start, so that'll definitely happen. Anything else on the email topic? Can we move on to social media? Okay. I'm going to share my screen, maybe. I wanted to show you the social media policy that Susan had shared with all of us. And Susan, do you want to guide this conversation? Just talk to us a little bit about this.
Back last fall, I contacted CTAS to see what they had available for us as a sample policy, and they sent me two. I since went online and found, others here and there as well, and just kind of cobbled that policy into this policy. The one from, I believe it was Smyrna, Tennessee, was fairly representative of this one, and just to give us a starting point. So we kind of, weren't reinventing the wheel here.
Do you want to talk us through like kind of this first section, then we'll talk about the general policy, and then the
Absolutely. There are some entities within the county that do have social media now. The big one is the library, and they do a great job. This policy just kind of establishes that, we need to know what's going on those social media sites as well. Which I don't think that'll be a problem with the library at all, just with us communicating with each other as we are doing now. Jody, can you scroll down on the policy? I don't know that I can. Thank you. this just outlines that, those will be maintained by us, that they'll follow this policy, that they'll always link back to the county's website for more information, which is where we do want to drive people to go deeper. Social media should just tease them into wanting to look. That we will monitor content as it applies to us, which would be, news sites and things like that. We will monitor our sites as well. It just for defamatory comments that we would need to catalog and remove. From my banking background, I'm used to dealing with compliance issues where we would have someone come in and make a really bizarre comment, and we'd have to catalog that we had removed that and why we had removed it, that wasn't germane to the conversation, copy the comment, and do all of the back stuff on that. Let's see, I'm reading down through here. It would be subject to the Open Records Act, any of the social media. Scroll on down a little bit there, Jody, if you would. This would just be another way really for us to disseminate information, and we would monitor the comments to make sure that there's nothing bad out there.
And did I kind of hadn't thought about the fact that, I certainly knew that the EMA had a Facebook page. I didn't think about the library also. Yes. It sounds like has an active, Facebook page, or?
They have several Facebook pages. Those are broken out by their different program areas. Like they'll have one for young readers, they'll have one for adult readers, and they have general ones for the Jonesboro branch and then for the Gray branch. Just highlighting.
And then do we have, and then the EMA, and then are there others? Do you have a catalog of all the social?
Yes, the only other one we have is the extension office. And then sometimes they will post things on their Facebook page with the archives.
Okay. So really, there's already social media happening.
Yes, there is.
In the absence of a policy. And the idea here is to rein that in perhaps a little, or at least look at how we may have some risk associated with other sites that are cropping up, and then see if we can't proactively establish a few social media strategies for communicating with constituents. Mm-hmm. Feedback. Susan, any other comments, and do people have feedback on social media?
If you would like to see how, I know it comes up a lot about how much time this takes to maintain social media. Jumping off of your policy, Jody, I wanted to share what I currently do, because I'm also the public information officer for EMA. So it's going to kind of show you what we do there. We currently use Hootsuite to do our social media. So that way, let me go into our dashboard here. This is just an easy, free application that allows you to post and plan, which is important because you don't want to be doing this every day. But I usually do Rusty and Evan's posts 2 weeks at a time. So like here you can see we had posts go out this morning. We've got posts scheduled out through the 4th of July. It may take it just a second since we're online actively. And this also catalogs the post and shows everything that's happened with that post, like how many comments and likes we've gotten. Mm-hmm. And it's just a good dashboard to categorize.
So I'm assuming you can manage multiple accounts from.
Yes. And this is the free version, which allows you to do up to 3 social media accounts. So since we only have 2 with EMA, it worked out perfectly. But that's how easy it is to set all of this up. And if we did want to invest in the paid version at some point for the county, I know the library has expressed interest in having access to that for all of theirs. It just makes it easier to plan it out. Then we could all see what each other was posting, which is, makes it cohesive.
other feedback from folks? And I am going to call on you, Ms. Wilkinson. Does anybody else have just any off the top observations or comments? Okay, Allison, do you mind to tell us what kind of some thoughts are from a attorney's perspective on this policy?
Sure. and you don't have to call on me if there's still, I'm not a member of your task force, so I don't want to speak over anyone else if they've got a view from that practical point of view. So let me just start from what we're talking about right here. I noticed, so the library and the EMA, and this I think will be good as a pathway, that the way I'm looking at this is solely from a legal perspective, not the creativity, not the, you know, the idea of it, or certainly, you know, nothing like that. But the library, the EMA, and the Ag Extension are not actually county offices per se. So I just think we should be mindful of that when we're talking about just accuracy, because messaging and the effectiveness of messaging has to do, the accuracy is created out of that messaging. So to suggest that EMA is a county, you know, office is, you know, not quite on point, because of course, as I understand it, and I'm on the fly here, I think that's a joint venture between Washington County and Johnson City. Likewise, the library has a board that it answers to. I think the Ag Extension has one employee that's a county employee, and I think that they're a state agency. So those structural guidelines, I think, should inform our flow here from a legal perspective of what we're talking about. Interestingly, I'll tell you, a Washington County office that does have a social media presence, and that is on Facebook, and it's the Washington County Sheriff's Office. And interesting, right? Well, it's a fake page. It is actually operated without the authority of the Washington County Sheriff. So, you know, that is, I just think, something for us to think big picture when we're thinking about social media. So stepping back from that, looking at this policy, which, and I want to be really mindful not to at all suggest I'm grading, you know, the city of Smyrna's work, because obviously it works for them. And I think, you know, that's not my goal here. I think it is developed and designed to reflect municipal organization, and it does not reflect the county structure. So that would be my first thought. And that is operating from the premise that always we want documents to manifest what we're trying to communicate, what our intention is, and, you know, and reflect that information. So, I mean, we can step through it, but big picture, if you look at the general policy, and Susan distributed that, it's, you know, that it talks about establishment and use by any county department of county social media sites, that it would be subject to the approval of the mayor or his designees. And so this is not a county, it could be modified, but I'm looking at this from a legal perspective, kind of some big pictures for you to think about so that you accomplish what you're trying to do. Is who would be then the person to authorize. I think one way to look at this is, you know, to work it from the ground up, like from this one, for example. Susan has been communicating on behalf of the mayor's office as his designee to do that. And so that might be a good place to start. But big picture, I would say that we want to be really respectful of the fact that, well, one, for starters, we have a social media policy. I heard someone say we didn't, and I just, so that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, we know that, right, commissioners? You may not. Susan, you have a copy of it?
Are you talking about the employee policy?
Yes, in the employee handbook.
Yes.
Okay, good deal.
I do not have I don't have it on me right now, but that is more along the lines, wouldn't you say, of how employees are to act on social media?
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Okay.
what I would want to point out is that we don't want to, we, the county, would not want to have a social media policy that doesn't address that, where they're in conflict. So that would be a suggestion and a recommendation that they dovetail in a way. And that really goes to, what are you trying to accomplish here? You, the communications director, you, the task force, what are you trying to accomplish with this social media policy? Is this an internal policy to drive and direct how the communications director would be able to flow that information? Or is this a social media policy? And, which then would imply internally, employees, what can they do? What may they not do? And for your benefit, commissioners, our Washington County social media policy does put forward something of a balancing test, that by serving as a county employee, one has to manage one's First Amendment rights, because there could be a presumed confusion on the part of a reader, that when they see that person and they know that person is, in their mind, the county, that what they're saying then could be conflated with speaking for the county. And I think that's just a good thing to keep in mind, because then you get to one of the things that Susan touched on from her past experience in banking, which is the removal of posts. There is considerable litigation with respect to First Amendment issues, defamation, and then also something that I think is interesting, it's viewpoint discrimination. So that may not rise to the level of a defamatory act. It may not use vulgar or profane language, but it may just be considered offensive by the hosting party. And I think that's something to address, so that you have a workflow. If this social media policy is strictly for allowing the communications director the ability to have this framework and what it looks like, then I think you want to have, a process and procedures. Having a policy, even when this gets refined, as Susan said, this was a draft that she was working from, and maybe the city of Smyrna has some other documents that go with this that reflect their procedures. But when you have policies without procedure, you can have a very big challenge managing case by case issues that could arise alleging something related to that. So I think with you doing that on the front end, you would want to address that. So maybe from the ground up, you'd want to start with, who are the elected officials who want to have social media presence? Because some of the litigation is very interesting, because it ultimately says that the conduct is addressed at the ballot box. That, if you're an elected official, for example, and you rely upon the opinion of the voter for your future, role in staying in that office, one has a say then to say, no, I don't really want, to be on Facebook. I'll do my office some other way. And I think that as constitutional statutory office holders, and it's my legal opinion that each of them has the right to say, I don't want to be on Facebook, or I'd love to be on Facebook, or, maybe something in between, so that they can address it. And that way it's also our communications director is not in a bad spot where she's, blending who she's speaking for, because there should be no confusion by a reader. There's been litigation in this county that arose out of Facebook. And so I'm gonna, was not here at that time, but I hear, reference to it from time to time. So I will have a conservative opinion generally about the content. And that goes back to procedures. What is the content, and what would this task force, like to have on there? I think these are things that, could provide some guidance to the communications director, the type of information that would be shared. So just big picture, there's some references, and again, this is probably just because it's the Smyrna wording, but it says, employees representing county government must conduct themselves at all times. So that kind of confuses if this is internal or external. and whatever it is the wish of this task force and committee to do, I think you want to have a bold line so that you're not walking a tightrope. It also says that, it references some Sunshine Act information, that no officials will use the social media to backdoor the Sunshine Open Meetings Act. I think that kind of thing, we probably would want our recommendations in that area to be, either more specific or more broad, but probably not in a policy like this. And, so just some broad terms like, that comments can be subject to removal and restriction based on their content, and what is content? I mean, that's a pretty broad idea that, content would be the basis for removal. And what is the procedure for removal? Is it that the communications director is going to make that determination and keep that log that she was describing? That log, for example, would be a good example of a procedure. But if she's the one doing that, then ultimately, as a mayor's employee, then that's the office that removed it. And so is she doing that on behalf of, if it's another website, would she be doing it on behalf of, I see Kathy Story there, our clerk, our county clerk. If Kathy Story had a website, what is the procedure by which the communications director, if that's the person to be removing this content, what protects her and the county from, viewpoint discrimination, defamation, or anything like that? A, we need to have the procedure, but B, what analysis would she be, what are her guiding principles that she'd be using? I think, looking at my notes here, there's not a distinction of online and offline speech. I think, we can maybe looking at that sort of thing, but, officials, elected officials, and that includes y'all as commissioners, you're accountable to the public. And so providing a legal recommendation, that's going to be my first thought, is that each of you and your accountability has a bold line so that you've said what you meant and you meant what you said, and whether it's at the ballot box or someplace else, anyone who's accountable for the statement, knows that the statement was made and had the opportunity to vet it. I think, the emails y'all were talking about are really good examples. To Commissioner Wheeler's point, the issue, and I did only hear parts of it, so I could be mistaken, out of the sheriff's office was, and we have this a lot, where the sheriff's employees, the county employees, are not the mayor's employees. And so the mayor then has this, voice that he shares with the county, but he's in his silo, I think is the phrase a lot of people use, talking about that. So when he's sharing that information, he's also the chair of the budget committee. So he does have, that information to share, but how can it be phrased in a word that the messaging is very clear so that when it lands in the sheriff's department, it can be applied effectively, that it retains its accuracy. And a lot of that is owing to the unusual structure of county government, which is not that tricky once you get into it. But I think we want a flow chart that allows for that. So those are my big picture points. I hope that helps you.
Allison, thank you so much. And can we get some thoughts off the top? Any response that folks want to add in right away? Jim?
I would. I think the procedures is a really good idea. And the comments were what kind of struck me as something I was concerned about. If we're allowing comments, somebody's going to have to be monitoring those pretty closely. And we are going to need procedures that say what gets removed, because that can become extremely political extremely fast. Mm-hmm. And that's the last thing we need, is to get into something where we're being accused of politics and what gets removed and what doesn't. So my personal thought would be not to have them at all. But if we are going to have them, then we need some, if we're not, that needs to be set out in it. But if we are, we need some very specific procedures on what comes out. And I do think, maybe we need a policy. This is a good idea to do this, but I thought we were really going to focus more on getting something up from general county as opposed to looking at what each department does or does not do. And I do think it's going to take some legal tweaking to fit the county organization. I mean, that makes sense. We're organized completely differently than the municipality on what we can and can't require. But that's tweaking. That's easy to do. That could be done offline, not in this meeting. But I think we do need to think about procedures on especially comments.
I was surprised that CTAS did not send us Sevier County's policy, because that is the closest county to us that has social media. So I'm going to reach out to Larry Waters, the mayor in Sevier County, and see if we can get that. That might be closer akin to what we're going to need, and would be a good place to start.
It's a great idea, Susan.
Yeah, that they're always very receptive to sharing.
Other feedback?
I will remind you, actually, to Commissioner Wheeler's point, that when we set up the YouTube channel, and when you got the streaming of the meetings, we were able, and it was specifically for that reason, to disable comments. So there were no comments on the Washington County Government YouTube channel. And that was, and we also set it up with different firewalls and that sort of thing. We still
Right.
had IT person at the time.
People are able to comment on our YouTube channel. We get comments here and there, but nothing crazy.
Well, I guess
When the committee
changed.
looked at that, one of the conditions that we put on it was that we were not supposed to have comments. But I had heard recently, I don't know if what changed, but when
I think I sent you all a comment that popped up on one of the meetings that was regarding libraries.
that's when I did see that.
Yes.
But I know that the rules committee, when we did the contract with him, there were not supposed to be any comments.
Okay. I'll revisit that and see what's happened since you all started the YouTube channel that would have kicked it to where it will allow comments. It could be something with YouTube. It could be something that Tim didn't change. But I'll follow back around with him on that and make sure we get that disabled.
And if I could have a copy of those comments, because that is a term that we negotiated, and that's a legal issue if someone's commenting on it. And so I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah.
Susan. But what I was going to say is that Facebook doesn't give you that opportunity. Most other social media will not allow you to disable your comments. So, and I actually may have Sevier. I'm flipping through my notes here. There's some lawyers in Nashville who sent me a number of policies. And so if I have any of those, I'm happy to share them all the way around. I mean, I did do some general reading on this topic at different times. So if anybody would like any of the information, I've called. But I'm just a big believer, that we need to, in fact, I do have it. Did you say Sevier County?
Yeah, I think I sent you the one that was off of their website. It wasn't necessarily their policy. That would just be the one that they put out there that was on their social media page.
I think, I think if the task force could provide the communications director with the goals and intentions like you did with procedures and that sort of thing, the legal is very happy to tweak and make sure that it reflects whether it's, sometimes the worst thing in the world you can have is something that's cobbled together and patched from other places. I'm sure anyone who's tried to probate a will that was written by someone at home by other people's wills would attest to that. And I'm happy to do that. So just, so that it reflects what you want. And maybe it's a good idea starting with, our social media policy for the county, although it is mostly internal, does talk about the county mayor being the only official to speak for, quote, the county. And so, that's a great starting point. The communications director is already speaking on behalf of the mayor. And so, that's a great point. And then you could get that messaging up, and then maybe then one by one in turn, those other officials could, decide how they want to do that. Maybe that would be a good way so that you get some traction. I know that was discussed last night to get some traction. And anyway, enough about that. But if I can help, I'm happy to.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to take some action items forward on this so that we can wrap up our meeting on time today. And so thing one is I'll take a stab at the first part, which talks about why we want to do social media, kind of the purpose, and see if I can focus that a bit more, and Susan and I can work on that together. And then you all can have a chance to look at that for our next meeting. And then I would ask that we add in a procedures or process section, as well as make corrections to the broader document to make it specific to Washington County, and address the range of issues that you mentioned today, Allison. So I'm hoping that Susan and Allison can kind of between each other, pass them back and forth, get the rest of that thing. I would love to bring it to the next meeting, get some feedback on it, finalize it, and push it through so that maybe in August, at least, we can wrap this up and roll it out. Does that sound like an okay process for moving this forward to people? Okay, very good. Nice, awesome, thank you so much, people, I love it. Susan, can you give us a quick update on the website and where things stand?
I can. The mayor and I and VCTI met with the developer last week. Mitch has shown up, and he's walking by my door. He's so much fun today. The project is moving again. We are reviewing some of the sites that he has finished. At the time we first started working with him, he didn't have anything available. So we are looking at the functionality of those sites to see where we want to head next.
And these are sites he's developed for us.
No, not for us, for other people. If you want to look just really quickly, I'll tell you what, not to take up our time, I'll send you all the links to 2 of the websites that he has finished for counties.
Great. What do you need from us to be able to keep this going? Do you need our input on it? Do you just need us to help you keep it on everyone's radar? Like what can we do to be helpful?
Well, once he gets us a look and feel for the website, I would like to send it to you all to try out to see if you find it functional, because I'm a big believer in having many different people from many different walks of life look at things to see if it works for them. That way we can hopefully, if there's something goofy, we can find it before we deploy it.
Great. I think that sounds great. So send that out to us when you have it, and it'll be in time for our next meeting.
Absolutely.
Do you have any thoughts on County 101? We were
Yes. Let's start
launching
it
County 101.
I think we should launch it this fall. What do you think?
I love that idea. We
We do have money in the budget for it.
Yeah.
We need to get us some more participants though, because I think at last count, you and I had less than 10, and we would like to have between 12 and 20.
Well, I don't even think we thoroughly recruited because we got stopped in our tracks before we were, anywhere. And that may happen again, but we're going to try. So I love the idea of reigniting that, and maybe you can give us an update on that next time too, with some of those dates and formats.
We do have propane buses now. Remember we were going to do a propane bus on our ride around? We do have the propane
The
bus.
windows down and everyone wearing face masks. Yes.
So on that topic, just to remind you where you left it, it was in CIA, I think in March, before the commission meeting, and then the meeting was canceled for COVID. And at that point, it hadn't been through legal and from CIA to the commission meeting, but just to bring you all in the loop, before COVID, but after CIA, I did, as promised, reached out to our purchasing director with respect to our insurance, and I reached out to the school board with respect to their insurance for the premises, for the buses, and for everything else. So if it is something that the county wants to undertake, the predicate is in place to deal with that, but we do need to have some lead time so that we just make sure that we address those less attractive issues like liability.
Less attractive, but important. And so that's great. Thank you. I think we've come to the bottom of our list. So way to go, people. I'm so proud of us. That was a pretty good list, and we made it through. I think I would be comfortable with, when do you all think we need to meet again? I don't think we need to meet again until the social media policy has been reworked. What's a good timeline for that? I guess that really is a Susan and Allison question. We technically are having our June meeting now, so we could meet again in July and get that policy sorted out, but I'm not sure in time for the July meeting. That kind of depends on what you all can realistically do.
Do you think we want to shoot for August?
Well, sure, we could meet in early August, like the week that the other committees meet. But if the policy is not ready to go, we are not going to have it to the full commission in time again. And now it'll be another month delayed. So I'm fine to wait until August, but we probably ought to have like maybe an email update or something in the interim.
Well, and I mean, I think, you know, I don't know what, I mean, Susan has talked about some things on her plate. I think for the general turnaround, I mean, we typically get things out of here within 2 or 3 days. So if just so who's got the most recent draft, who's taking the laboring oar, if I get something from Susan, I'll turn it around as quickly as possible. If you're asking me to rewrite it, just let me know if that's what you're asking me to do so that I'm not holding up something that you're waiting for.
Okay. I don't know what to do. I think it's probably better to err on the side of giving you all more time rather than trying to rush something along. So let's schedule for early August and just, you know, set the bar at, you know, kind of if you get 2 weeks down the road and you're not making progress on it, there's some real stumbling blocks. We need to get together to brainstorm some solutions. I'd rather do that in July and just add a meeting in than wait and find out in August that it couldn't work out and these are the reasons and we just didn't work on it for 2 weeks because we could. Let's just stay in touch, and I just want to make sure you all know I'm willing to hold another meeting if we need to.
That's great guidance. Thank you. That's helpful. I mean, just from my perspective, I wouldn't want anything sitting with me that I wasn't delivering. Do we know when the mayor's meeting, the department head elected officials meeting, would that inform your decision, Commissioner Jones?
Not
We
really.
haven't said that yet, so.
Great. Well then, Susan, we'll get something scheduled with this group for somewhere around the first week in August, and I'll look forward to that.
The other thing that's currently percolating, I'm reaching back out to ETSU and Milligan regarding an intern for my office to assist mainly with doing some video things that we would be able to share on the website as well as social media. So that's cooking as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that idea. That'll expand our capacity.
Yep. Get us some good
Super.
video work up there. It'll be great.
Great. I think we still have a quorum. Do we want to have a motion, entertain a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I like that one.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your input, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
All righty, and I'll post this on our YouTube channel here in a couple minutes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.